Hey, 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 good morning. It is Eric Arnold here in my politics barn. That's what I call my little homemade studio out here in my barn. Doubles as a handicapping for sports barn slash studio as well. Those are the normal type of videos I make. However, I'm perturbed by the way things are going in this country. So occasionally I just can't help myself, and I need to come out here and vent and tell you people about the news of the day and hope that you will perhaps think about what's going on in this country as we head on down the road to authoritarianism and tyranny. I don't want to go there. I want you to think about that first. So that's what we're here tonight. Tonight, we are going to talk about this recent interview that Joe Rogan did on his podcast with Dr. Robert Malone, an over 3-hour interview with Mr. Malone or Dr. Malone. I went through the first hour of the interview, and there was so much stuff in there. It was like, oh my God, this is incredible. There is so much stuff here, and it's so important. I've got to talk about this. So we're only going to cover the first hour of the interview, and perhaps I'll probably make a couple more episodes discussing the rest of the interview, provided YouTube doesn't cancel me, which I think is a real possibility. For you new people, I've already had one video taken down by YouTube. They give you 4 strikes before you, well, I guess they just could throw you off altogether and just do away with their whole strike procedure. But right now I have 1 strike, and I'm not happy about it. I watched the Rogan interview on the YouTube platform. And if you're wondering what this interview is and where do I go see it, go to Spotify, screw YouTube, cut them out altogether. Go to Spotify, that's where Rogan exists, that's where he resides. I believe it's free. You have to sign up for a free account and then you can see it. I saw it on YouTube simply so I could say to YouTube with a straight face, I saw all this crap on your platform, so don't tell me that I'm the one promoting vaccine hesitancy when it was on your platform to begin with. So, now YouTube's going to do whatever they want. I mean, they probably saw the words vaccine hesitancy in their little algorithm readout, and I'm probably already shot the video down. But watch this video now, fast. And I'm going to put the link to the YouTube link. I'll put both links in there, to the Spotify link and the YouTube link in the comments. You can go there yourselves. I encourage you to go there yourselves and watch as much of this 3-hour interview that you have time to watch or listen to. It's incredible. It's incredible. I mean, the stuff that this man is alleging is just, oh man, and I'm up on this stuff. I follow this stuff pretty closely. So let's get into it. Now I've kind of given you a background because I think there might be some new people coming through the politics barn and are saying, what the hell am I watching? All right, so you know who I am. I'm a libertarian who talks politics, primarily handicapped sports. That's who I am. Who is Robert Malone? I think you all know who Joe Rogan is. Joe Rogan, I guess he probably runs the most popular podcast in the world, I guess. Has the most viewers, the most listeners. He calls the UFC fights. I think he initially was a comedian of some type. Strangely enough, I mean, in our twisted upside down world, Joe Rogan is one of the most important, influential people in the United States right now. He just is. So this man Malone being interviewed by Rogan, big platform. But still, I don't think you people understand what was presented to us by Mr. Malone, again, Dr. Malone, on the Rogan podcast. So that's what we're here for. So let's get into that. Dr. Robert Malone, he's about, I'd say, 61 years old. He styles himself as the inventor of small m, capital RNA technology. I'll write that, well, on the board here. mRNA. There. And I am not a scientist. I guess he came up with this stuff in the late 80s, early 90s in response to the AIDS pandemic or whatever we're called that, AIDS outbreak, AIDS whatever. Apparently, these vaccinations have some, I don't know, common thread in them called small m, capital RNA. And he says he's the inventor. I think he basically will admit that, there were other people involved. It wasn't like Edison invented the light bulb. He was one of many people involved in the project. But, he's definitely one of the primary people that was involved in creating the technology that enabled them to come up with this most recent vaccination, which is based on this technology. These vaccinations that we're being told to get is based on this technology, that he was part of the ones created it back in the late 80s, early 90s. I think that's pretty safe to say it's true, that his name is on a number of patents. So that's who this guy is. Now he's still involved in the game. He's whatever you want to call him, an I can't pronounce the word, immunologist, a scientist. He's got a very, to me as a layperson, impressive resume of doctorates and accomplishments, and he was on this board, that board, he consulted here, he was on that project, all that type of stuff. He calls himself an insider to the virus, vaccination, government type thing. And he speaks like one. I think that is pretty safe to say he is one. Again, first time I've ever heard the guy talk. So, I'm just meeting the guy for the first time. So clearly now he's been making the rounds of the alternative media. Is that what we're calling it? I guess for you Democrats out there, you would call it the fringe right-wing nutcase media. Well, whatever. I mean, whatever. He's not on NBC, he's not on MSNBC, he's not on CNN, he's not being interviewed by the Washington Post for whatever reason, but he's being interviewed by Tucker Carlson and Steve Bannon and those type of people, and now Joe Rogan. So what does now here, before we get into what the doctor's alleging, let me give you the other side. I'll give you the Democrats right up front, giving you your equal time. In August of 2021, there was a piece on the doctor in the Atlantic. Now, do you know what the Atlantic is? It's a far left-wing publication. It's owned by Steve Jobs' widow. She's a far left activist, Laurene Powell Jobs. Billionaire, inherited the Jobs fortune. So she's a far left activist, owns the Atlantic. The Atlantic is, I think they would admit they're left wing. I don't think there's any doubt about that. They endorsed Hillary Clinton in 2016. So clearly a leftist publication. The article about Malone basically took issue with him calling himself the inventor of this technology. As I pointed out, I think he may exaggerate that a little bit, but, people like to puff up their resumes a little bit. I'm the inventor. That sounds better than I'm the co-inventor. You know what I mean? So, they found a bunch of people that said, well, yeah, he was there, but, he wasn't. There were a lot of other people more important than he was. So, but they had to, even in the Atlantic piece, It admits that he was there and he was important and he was involved in the creation of this mRNA technology, which is enabling these vaccinations which are going forth today. So they admit to that, even though they contest that he, or allege that he's inflated his resume. They say he's hard to work with, argumentative type of guy that butts heads with his other colleagues. Trying to think what else is the article came up with. Really, that's about it. I mean, more or less that they're just slandering him because he has the temerity to question the vaccination, to say, well, maybe we're rushing this a little bit. Maybe we haven't done all the tests we should have done. Maybe we shouldn't be giving this to every last person. Maybe we should only be focusing on the at-risk population. As if that's some kind of heresy. And it's that he's wrong just right out of the box for saying that. So I don't know that's that's how to say that's an indictment of Dr. Malone. That's just simply saying his position's different than yours, Atlantic. And then let's finish up with this. Right at the bottom of the Atlantic piece that is online, and I'll probably put the link to that there too, just in the interest of full disclosure, so you can read that too. Right at the bottom of the piece, it says, the Atlantic COVID coverage is funded by, and I'm going to read this to you so I don't screw it up, the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative. I looked that up. That's Mark Zuckerberg. He owns the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative, which is all his money, which goes to whatever I stumble over words. What's the do good deed money, or whatever he wants or thinks is a good deed. In other words, he thinks a good deed is electing all Democrats. I would argue that's not a good deed, but that's what he thinks that word means that I can't pronounce. That's one thing that was funded by the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. Now, what's that? That's another do-gooder fund that was funded back in the 30s by the inventors, or not the inventors, the founders of Johnson & Johnson. That foundation, the Wood Johnson Foundation, they manage $13 billion now. That's how much money they have, they control, and they can do whatever they want. They can put money here, they can put money there. Do you think that they might have an agenda to try to steer people to, I don't know, Johnson & Johnson products? Maybe. And then lastly, of course, Laurene Powell Jobs owns the Atlantic, far left activist. So clearly the Atlantic piece has a slant. They want you to think one thing about the doctor, that he's a crackpot. And really, if you read the piece, it's kind of like, really, I don't see anything here that this guy's a crackpot. He just disagrees with you. I don't see a reason that his opinion isn't valid, that it has no value. All right, so that's who Dr. Malone is. So now the history of what's been going on here is, as the doctor's been making the rounds more and more, he's getting canceled, of course, because we just can't have a discussion in this country about this virus, about the pandemic and what to do about it, here coming up on the 2nd year anniversary of the goddamn thing. You know it, I know it, I really know it because I've been canceled by YouTube once, and I'll probably get this one taken down too. So it's infuriating that intelligent, hell, ain't not even intelligent. Just because the people that are running this country think they're smarter than everybody else, and probably in some fashion they are. If you take the grades of the people at YouTube and match them up with the grades of the people at the Douglasville Hotel, it's probably higher. That doesn't mean the people at the Douglasville Hotel don't matter and they don't get to have a say. That is so wrong, it's not even funny. But that's where this country's going. The elites want to tell us what to do because they're smarter than us. And it's not right. And we need to push back on that. That's another tangent. Now, I believe in free speech. That's why we make these videos. At any rate, so he's getting canceled because obviously, as he said, by definition, if you discuss the vaccination and where they came from and question whether all the steps were followed the way they should have been, by definition, that's vaccination hesitancy. They're saying, well, wait a minute now. Maybe we ought to think about this. No, can't do that. I mean, I guess the only way it wouldn't promote vaccination hesitancy is if, say, for example, well, we didn't run all the clinical trials that we should, and data was manipulated, and we rushed through the steps, and we skipped a bunch of steps. Had we done that, we would have found that penises grow an extra 3 inches when they take the vaccination. Now, if that came out, everybody would want the damn thing. But of course, we don't know that because we skipped a bunch of steps and we don't know that yet. That could be, a hidden value. I'm making that up. I really don't think that's the case. I've been vaccinated. I know that didn't happen to me. Your mileage may vary perhaps, but not me. So, that's what he's saying is that I can't even say anything because they're going to shut me down, and they have. Here's some examples of how this guy's getting silenced. He's been suspended twice by LinkedIn. I didn't even realize that those guys were jumping on the bandwagon, but I guess they are. According to him, he was booted off banned by LinkedIn. Then he made a call to a guy named Steve Kirsch, who I guess is a Silicon Valley wheel. I think he's also a vaccination hesitancy guy. But he knows people in Silicon Valley, so he was able to get to somebody at LinkedIn and say, hey, could you look into this? Because this guy really doesn't think he deserves to be kicked off your platform. And sure enough, they apologized to him and reinstated him. Then they kicked him off or suspended him a second time. And it's unsure. I'm unsure why that happened. I just looked him up just now before I came out here to the studio, and he does have an active account on LinkedIn. Now, on the 29th of December, the day before he was interviewed by Rogan, today, if you're wondering, it's the 3rd of January here in the Politics Barn. The day before he got interviewed by Rogan's Twitter suspended him. Or I guess that's the wrong word. They canceled him, gone, off Twitter. And then, of course, they're asking him, well, Rogan's asking him, well, what did you say? And he's like, fuck, I don't know. They never tell you. And I know I can speak to that personally. No, they never tell you exactly what you said. Why would they do that? So they don't tell you. So he's trying to guess exactly what he may have said. He thinks that he referred to a Canadian video. Again, you got to watch the Rogan interview. You can see it for yourself. He referred to a Canadian video where they talked about data manipulation, that the people running this show, the big pharma, the governments, whatnot, are not counting these numbers accurately and therefore using manipulated data to promote their lockdowns and vaccination campaigns, etc. I have no knowledge of that one way or the other. I did not watch the Canadian video. Let's see, what else? Says he knows Tony Fauci personally. All right, he talks about informed consent. I thought that was an important point. In other words, I guess in the medical community, or perhaps the drug community, really, that they're trying to figure out or discover new drugs to treat ailments, disease, whatnot in humans, that informed consent apparently is some kind of a trigger word for them, that if they are going forth to a group of people saying, okay, you volunteered here to test out this new wonder drug that's going to make your penis grow 3 inches, you need to know all the potential side effects, like your hair's going to fall out, your feet are going to grow, and your teeth will fall out. And then you can go, well, I don't know, that 3 inches sounds pretty good. And then you can do it anyway. Or you can say, well, I kind of like my hair. And, now some of you might be already bald and go, give me the 3 inches. So that would be informed consent. Now, what he's saying is this whole deal here, this giant vaccination campaign that's going forth throughout the planet Earth is one big experiment, and we haven't been given enough information to make informed decisions. Therefore, how can we give the governments our informed consent? We're just being told to do it. I can see arguments on both sides of that. I mostly agree with them. Once again, can I say everything I want to say here on YouTube? Hell no. I got to self-censor myself because I figure I'm going to get kicked off, and then, you people don't get to hear what I have to say. I'm talking to myself here in the barn. I guess the cat that's sitting over there in the corner, it's like, wow, you're right. We do need to do something about this. But he can't vote and he can't even talk. So that really doesn't help us. So I have to try to stay within YouTube's lines. I could go over to Rumble and talk to 3 people over there. But for now, YouTube has a monopoly. So I have to kind of go by their censorship rules. And that sucks. That's un-American. That ain't right. And right there, that tells you something about this vaccine campaign to me. That speaks for itself. But so he's against that sort of thing, this cancel culture, and he's right. So, here he is on Rogan, who's not on YouTube, or at least he is now. Again, got this from your platform there, YouTube. So don't cancel me because this came off your platform. It's on there right now, to my knowledge. Let's see what else. All right, now here's some things he got to that I just went, what? He said few magic words that they don't let you say, but again, got this off of YouTube, so I'm going to say these words. Are you ready? Ready? The magic words, and they don't begin with F and they don't begin with C. Ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine. Do you know what that is? These are these cheap drugs that have been out there for the whole pandemic that we've been told are completely useless, and you're a fool to even think about using these things. And only quacks, cranks, and Trump people even think these things exist or work. He's saying these things are effective. And I'm like, well, I don't know. I haven't used them. I haven't been sick. I don't know. But I want to read you a quote. And this should be a headline in every United States newspaper. It should have been the day after he gave the interview. This should have been the headline of every United States newspaper in this goddamn country. Here's the quote. And I paraphrased a little bit because he had, a couple stumbles and ums in there, but this is pretty much verbatim. You check it out for yourself in the first hour of the Rogan interview. Quote, there's good modeling studies, which probably 500,000 excess deaths have happened in the United States through the intentional blockade of early treatment by the United States government. It's a combination of ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine. Unquote. There's good modeling studies, which probably 500,000 excess deaths have happened in the United States through the intentional blockade of early treatment by the United States government. Unquote. What? That's 500,000 people. For those of you that aren't familiar with the numbers, the current number dead that they're reporting on Worldometer here in the United States is around 800,000, give or take. He's saying 500 of those 1,000 could have been avoided if the government hadn't been blocking the use of hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin. And that's a hell of an allegation. You know, I don't want to believe it myself. I really don't. I was like, oh my God, tell me that's not true. But I know it is. I believe it. I believe it. You know, why do I believe it? I'll tell you. This strikes me as the kind of deal where, you know, the way I'm thinking of it is like in the way back times, you know, where, I don't know, we'll say 17th century or something. I'm making this stuff up because I don't know that much about medicine. But I know at some point in the distant past, we didn't have all the medicines we have today. You know, people got by with whatever remedies they learned from their fathers and their fathers before that. So if you had Oompa Loompa disease, and, you know, whatever the symptoms came with that, you might have chewed leaves off the frick-frack tree. You know, everyone knows that you treat Oompa Loompa disease by chewing leaves off the frick-frack tree. Does it work? Well, works mostly. You know, mostly gets rid of the symptoms. Maybe Oompa Loompa disease runs its course and goes away on its own after a while, but it goes away faster if you take leaves off the frick-frack tree. Well, some point in time, somebody come up with a pill that gets rid of Oompa Loompa disease like that. You know, just boom, gone. If you take the pill. Well, the pill's expensive. So, you know, I still could see where there'd be people there going, well, I like the idea of getting rid of Oompa Loompa disease just like that. But, you know, I'm not working right now. I don't have any money. I can afford leaves off the frick-frack tree. I can't afford that pill. So, you know, they still use the leaves off the frick-frack tree, which are somewhat effective, but, you know, it's not perfect. Whereas the perfect pill, you know, that works. Well, now here, you know, in modern times, I view ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine as that kind of sort of thing that might work, that's cheap, that, you know, I could take this for this virus and it might work, it might not. You know, it'll probably help, but not right away and maybe not 100%. Whereas whatever they're developing in big pharma probably works better, but it's expensive and it wasn't available all at the time this was going on. So I had to wait to get these new drugs. That's kind of the way I see it, that these are cheap damn drugs that probably have some efficacy, that probably work in some fashion. But Dr. Malone certainly seems to think that they work, and he has way more degrees than I have. His resume looks pretty impressive to me, and he's saying other people in the world say it works too that have otherwise impressive degrees. Now, of course, you have other, you know, people that work in the government for big pharma that got impressive resumes too that say, well, you don't work at all. He's saying it does work. He's saying had they been using it, 500,000 people here in the United States would still be alive. That's a story. That is a story that should be leading the news on ABC News, NBC News, CBS. Every last news outlet in the country should be saying, wait a minute, this guy is saying the government just killed 500,000 people. How in the hell is that not a story? Well, of course, we all know the answer to that because there's a big giant blackout, a big giant media blackout on any kind of countervailing opinions or data or facts related to this virus, pandemic, whatever you want to call it. So that's one of the reasons I'm out here tonight to talk to you about this Rogan interview that I found just so fantastical. 500,000 people that the government, you know, I could have a whole new episode about the implications of that. Now, Rogan then went right back at him and said, well, why? You know, he names names too. He names names of the people that at the government, you're saying, well, the United States government restricted the use of this and killed 500,000 people. Who did that? He names them. Janet Woodcock, former head of the FDA. She was the FDA head, I guess, up until I think just a few months ago. She was the FDA head while Trump was there, carried over into the Biden administration. Now I think she just left. Rick Bright ran one of these alphabet soup government organizations that funds the vaccinations, I guess, that funneled money under Operation Warp Speed to all the big pharma. And he was in charge of this, I think it's called BARDA, B-A-R-D-A, and I have no idea what that stands for. Like I said, it's a governmental agency. You have no idea how many of these damn governmental agencies there are, but this is one of them, and apparently he ran that. I don't know if he was on the same level as Fauci or he reported to Fauci. I know Trump demoted him shortly after this whole thing got rolling. He quit the government in October of 2020, and now I think my notes say he's on the Joe Biden Corona Advisory Board, whatever the hell that is. So, he's obviously back in the, because he's Mr. Lockdown apparently, and, anti-cheap drug. So he's back in the, of course, good graces with the Biden administration, although I don't think he's officially part of the administration. So those two guys, Malone alleges, Janet Woodcock, Rick Bright, are the ones that shot down the use of ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine, which he says would have saved 500,000 people from dying. And I think it's pretty, why did they do this? Well, according to Malone, Bright said, well, there's no evidence hydroxychloroquine works. Again, I told you that, people with long resumes and great accomplishments are saying hydroxychloroquine doesn't work. And Malone's saying, bullshit. I think it's pretty clear it does work. And Bright knows it works, which is really interesting. Malone makes the allegation here that he personally, again, I told you, he's an insider, so he's involved in some of this stuff. He got evidence from the Chinese at the beginning of this pandemic. We're talking in the March 2020 range, that he obtained documents from the Chinese that they were using hydroxychloroquine to treat their sick people, their population, that he provided that information to the Trump administration, to Rick Bright, Fauci, Birx, I assume, etc. And, they just, that's interesting. And, they made their own decision. Hydroxychloroquine doesn't work. And, the Chinese are using it. So that's interesting. I guess you can make that argument if you're Rick Bright, in other words, it doesn't work. Are you kidding me? It doesn't work. In fact, now I would just question the fact that we can't even talk about these words. And I'm almost thinking that there's no way this video, I'm going to get a second strike for sure, just because these words are banned. I can't imagine. I'm almost shocked that this video was on YouTube, that this Rogan interview was on YouTube. But then he's Rogan, so, give me the bucks, money, money, money. So we'll see. I don't know. That's where I'm just like, you're saying it doesn't work. I think some other countries have begged to differ, but, again, I don't know. So what else? All right. Here's something that should have been on the front page of every goddamn newspaper. But of course it's not covered because of the blackout of information. Said there's a place in India. It's called Uttar Pradesh. Uttar Pradesh. That's spelled U-T-T-A-R. Like, the handling of this pandemic has been an utter disaster, except it's, U-T-T-A-R, not E-R. Uttar Pradesh, Pradesh, Pradesh. Apparently, it's the biggest province, state of India. It's on the north part of India. I think it borders Bangladesh. My geography over in that region is a little weak. Huge population. They have about 200 million people in a pretty small area. So it very heavily populated. The virus apparently was getting really rolling over there. And according to Malone, their solution was, all right, we got to do something. This is out of control. They sent packages out to the population, of which unknown what treatments, drugs, what have you, were in these packages. And it worked. They got a hold of it, controlled it. The virus has been knocked down to basically manageable levels, flatlined, if you will. But no one knows what's in these packages. That this is one where Rogan's like, what? And I'm a little bit on his level with that one too. Like, what? That India found a way to have success treating this virus, and no one will tell them. They won't tell us how they did it. What? Now it gets even better. Gets even better. Malone then alleges that the head of the Indian government, which is named, I had to look this up, Narendra Modi. Narendra Modi. He's the Joe Biden of India, apparently. He met with Joe Biden, our Joe Biden. They met, and shortly after that meeting, that's when Modi went dark as far as what was in the treatments that were used in Uttar Pradesh to successfully treat and control the outbreak there in Uttar Pradesh. It's like, what? Whoa! I mean, that's a major allegation. That is major stuff. Again, I know you don't know this because media blackout, and this is all crazy world. This is all Joe Rogan crazy world, right? What an allegation. Now, again, this would be, if we had a functioning news media, this would be easy to check. I did just 10 minutes of checking. It's like, wait a minute, all right, he's saying that they met. Well, I could look at it for myself. Where were these two together? Well, they were together. They were together at the G20 conference at the end of October at the Vatican. They both were there. So that meeting very well could have taken place. Now, when did the outbreak happen? Did it coincide with that meeting? I don't know. Was there an outbreak? What were the numbers prior to the meeting? I don't know. What are the numbers now? Did they flatline? I don't know. So I don't know any of that. But if we had a functioning news media, they'd look all this shit up and you know this stuff. But it's a hell of an allegation that, now, part of the, I guess I'm burying the lead here as far as what was in the box. The rumor is what was in the box was ivermectin, of course, if you didn't figure that one out for yourself. That was what was rumored to be in the box, one of these magical cheap drugs, the frick-frack leaves that, you can't use frick-frack leaves. I mean, give me a break. We got magic pills over here now we use. We don't use frick-frack leaves anymore. Only cavemen use frick-frack leaves. So, that was what was alleged to be in these treatments that the Indian government fired throughout Uttar Pradesh to get control of this outbreak. That's being alleged here by Dr. Malone. Again, that would seemingly be easy for a major news organization to check. In a way, you almost think to yourself, if it wasn't true, wouldn't NBC be out there with that story right now, bashing it down, making this guy Malone look like an idiot? We interviewed 10 million people here in India, and here's what was in the box. It was that's manufactured by Pfizer. It's some other thing that was invented by Johnson & Johnson, and what was definitely not in the box was hydroxychloroquine or ivermectin. Wouldn't you think they would have done that? These giant, big media companies, YouTube, Google, Twitter, that if they wanted to bury this guy and prove he's a liar, it seems like that would be an easy story to run down. Just the fact that I haven't seen that story making the rounds, so it kind of leads me to believe that there might be some truth to what this guy's saying. But don't know, haven't been to Uttar Pradesh myself and don't plan on going there since they won't let me fly anywhere. But, that's just me. Then we talk about the natural immunity, and Malone alleges the CDC is completely compromised as far as what comes out of it, science and what have you. Again, relying on his extensive list of accomplishments, degrees, and whatnot, expertise, that basically saying that the, whatever it is, 140 different studies that show that natural immunity is much, 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 and when I say much, I'm talking 10 to 20 times more effective than the vaccinations. So, you've been already had the virus. Malone's allegation or assertion is that you don't need the vaccination because you've already got natural immunity. That's what he's saying. Not saying that myself, YouTube, because that would be vaccination hesitancy. I guess, if you're scared to death of this virus, you should see, that's another question. I've always had this question, and maybe YouTube could tell me, because clearly they're the experts, and they have lots of medical doctors on staff that can answer this. So I'm sure they'll post in the comments the answer to my question, which is a valid medical question, and I think YouTube can answer. How many times can I get vaccinated? Is there a number that after a certain point does become counterproductive? I mean, it seems to me they want me to get, I'm hearing now that like 4 times, 5 times, they're on shot 4 in Israel. I think there are some other places that have maybe 5. Well, if you want me to get 4 shots, wouldn't 8 be better? What about just going for broke and why don't I just get 80? What would happen? I would be really never ever have a chance to get this virus in, right? I mean, it just seems to me you're giving these shots away, so why don't I just take advantage of it? What's the answer to that? Do you have an answer? There must be an answer. So I don't know myself. I'm not afraid of the virus, so I've never really thought about seriously doing that. But if I just got 17 shots in one day, what would happen to me? I don't know. So what else we got here? Now we're running up here about the end of hour 1, and that's good because this video is approaching 40 minutes long. So I would say then, I know he's got some really good stuff still to come where he talks about mass formation psychosis. And that is something I definitely want to talk about in a future video. Mass formation psychosis, basically that this has been just one big coordinated effort of big, and then you can just fill in after the blank. Big media, big pharma, big government, big rich people to subjugate us little serfs into doing whatever the hell they want us to do. That it's a mass formation psychosis, not unlike the 30s in Germany. He goes there. And I tend to agree with him that this is brainwashing on a stage that I've never personally experienced, where people you thought were relatively rational people are just acting completely crazy, just making no sense at all. And it's like, what is going on? And it's worrisome. And he goes there in the latter part of this interview, which I just simply haven't had time to get to. So I'm going to have more episodes on this very, very important Joe Rogan podcast that you need to hear. You absolutely need to hear it. I encourage you to listen to it as much as you can. I think there's Twitter threads out there where they're Cliff Notes versions of what everything was said. Go do that if you want. I think that would be good, where it's like, all right, I get it. Just give me the Cliff Notes version. Good, great. Yeah, I'm with you. I don't have all the hours in the day either. But again, Dr. Robert Malone, one of the people that helped found this vaccination technology, is making some pretty damning comments towards the powers that be. Basically feeding in, to me, confirming my worst suspicions. Hey, it may all be bullshit, right, Democrat friends? Could all be crap, right? He's a crackpot, just one of many crackpots. These drugs don't work. These whatever horse dewormers, they don't work. I don't know. Thanks for being here. Like I said, I know this video ran a little long, but this is so important. This stuff is so important. You just need to start thinking a little bit about what is being fed to you and does it make any sense? Where I'm sitting, it hasn't made sense for, almost since the beginning. But hey, that's me. I'm trying to convince you to think about this stuff. Think about this stuff. So thanks for being here. I do appreciate that. Hey, if this is stuff you like to hear, go ahead and subscribe. I don't, sadly, I do not anticipate this kind of stuff's going to end tomorrow and I'll have no function. It's like, all right, that's it. It's all over. Let's go back to being free and happy like we used to. I really don't think it's going to happen, so I expect there to be more of these videos. Hit the like button. That always makes me feel good. I guess you could hit the dislike button all you want because that doesn't show up anymore. Only I get to see that. So, if I see a bunch of dislikes, I know there are a lot of Democrats that watched it. But the general public, they don't see the dislikes anymore. I find that interesting. But thanks. Appreciate you. Eric Arnold signing off.